Hello, hello. It feels good to be back, and welcome back to the Hit the Green podcast. We have officially wrapped up our 2020 PGA Tour season. Dustin Johnson last week claiming the FedEx Cup, right, as the FedEx Cup champion, his first FedEx Cup victory. I mean, DJ's just been on an absolute tear lately. He has had a couple wins here if you include the FedEx Cup, second in that playoff to Jon Rahm. So DJ's just been spectacular here lately, and what can you say? I mean, it was a pretty lackluster start to the season for DJ, and it's pretty crazy that even with this torrid finish to the season, he's still, I think he came in maybe fifth in Player of the Year voting. For those that didn't see, Justin Thomas was named PGA Tour Player of the Year on Tuesday. Following JT, it was Rahm second in the voting. Morikawa came third. Webb Simpson coming fourth had a phenomenal season, so well deserved. And then DJ was fifth in that voting. Just a really slow year up until this finish for DJ. So, I mean, the driver became what we were used to seeing from DJ over these last 4 or 5 events to close the season. He was, if not the best driver on tour, one of, alongside, the likes of Jon Rahm, as well as Rory and Bryson, who continue to hit the driver well and will be some of the best drivers of the golf ball on the PGA Tour for years to come. But, man, what a role for DJ. He said it's been a real big goal of his to add a FedEx Cup to his trophy closet, to add that to the mantle, and he's done that. So this is a guy that, he's recorded a win in every single season he's played on the PGA Tour, which is unbelievable feat. He's a guy that, is a major championship winner. He is now a FedEx Cup champion, and one of the best athletes, pure athletes, that the game of golf realistically has ever seen. So really excited to see if DJ can keep this momentum going. We still have a couple majors to close out the 2020 season, right? We are going to get the U.S. Open, as well as the Masters, U.S. Open at Winged Foot, as well as the Masters to fill out our 2020 majors. So it's a little strange that we're moving into the 2021 season this week with the 2021 Safeway Open, but we do still have those 2 majors to complete from 2020 in the U.S. Open at Winged Foot and the Masters. It was, couldn't have asked for a better FedEx Cup playoff, a better start to my podcasting career as far as, a PGA Tour season goes. I think we saw some really, really exciting golf over the last 2-3 months. It's some absolutely crazy finishes down the stretch. We've had plenty of playoffs. We've had, all the big names competing. We've had, some surprises as well. A couple wins from Brendan Todd earlier this year. We saw a sighting from Jim Herman, who was able to pick up a win. So we've seen a little bit of everything since the tour's returned. It's been a really fun ride to sort of close out my first 2020 doing this podcast. My first season, I should say, PGA Tour season doing this podcast. And it being 2020 was, pretty unique. Probably why I started the podcast in the first place, right? With COVID looming, things being unsure, everyone trying to find a different and new way to utilize their time and efforts. No, I really couldn't have asked for anything better, and I really appreciate you guys that have stuck with me, that continue to listen, continue to follow. Apologize for no video last week, but as you can probably tell, I'm in some new digs, so trying to get officially moved in and get all settled. So I did go ahead and drop an article for you guys. It being the Tour Championship, there are only 30 players in the field anyway, so not really too much to choose from a DraftKings perspective. It was... it was just one of those weeks where I feel like probably better off playing less on DraftKings. There were fewer combinations you could create, and I did want to make a video, but again, being in the middle of a move, unfortunately just couldn't get it out for you guys. Really, really had to grind to be able to put this week's video together. We only have a $200,000 top prize on DraftKings this week, but in looking at the Safeway and doing my research yesterday, I really wanted to drop a video for you guys this week because it's a pretty interesting golf tournament we're going to see in Napa, in wine country up there in Northern California this week. So wanted to make sure I got you guys a video this week, and here I am. So yeah, let's go ahead and close out the Tour Championship, close out 2020. DJ won at 21 under. He was minus 11 for the week, of course, with that staggered start. He started the tournament being first in FedEx Cup points at 10 under. So he's minus 11 for the week to close at 21 under. Really wasn't pushed down the stretch there. It was a tie for second between Xander Schauffele and Justin Thomas, but DJ was really in control, honestly, from the jump. A wire-to-wire win for DJ. Looked like Sungjae Im might contend there for a bit following round 2, but after that push from Sungjae, really no one could make a run at DJ, and that's been the case for this guy over the last few weeks. He has been otherworldly, and it seems if DJ is playing his best golf, there are really only a handful of golfers that can compete, right? These guys who are when they're in form, the guys who are super elite, these, the DJs of the world, Jon Rahm, Rory McIlroy, Justin Thomas, when these guys are on their A game, and I might have to include Colin Morikawa in this discussion here pretty soon, but when these guys are on their A game, they're just almost impossible to beat. And the only people that really have a chance to beat them are the other elite players that would also be on their A game. So it goes to show that there are some players that their pedigree is enough. It speaks for itself. And as they start to round into form, you really want to start to take a look at them. Jason Day was sort of one of those guys who I've been touting over the 2020 season, who's just not quite playing up to his potential and his talent. And he's shown us where his talent can lead him. DJ was another one of those guys, right? Just had a tough start to the season. But as I mentioned, he's had a PGA Tour victory in every year he's been on tour. This guy's a major championship winner. He's now a FedEx Cup champion, and again, he's likely the best athlete on the PGA Tour and one of the best pure athletes we've seen in PGA Tour history. So, man, the game of golf is in such a good place with all of these unbelievable players. It seems like it's difficult to pick the top shelf week in and week out, especially when we were seeing these stacked fields over the last, 6, 7, 8 weeks. Man, there are so many amazing golfers on the PGA Tour. A guy like Bryson flashed so quickly, and then to just lose a little bit of form, really took him out of view entirely because we have so many great players on the PGA Tour. Super excited for the 2021 season. We'll also get to see, a new class of players enter from the Korn Ferry Tour, those that qualified to play on the PGA Tour in 2021. So we'll see if we have any more exciting rookies to look out for in the 2021 season. And that 2021 season starts this week with the Safeway Open. So with that, let's go ahead and get into the 2021 Safeway Open. Safeway Open's played at Silverado Country Club in Napa, California. We're in wine country up there in Northern California. Silverado plays at a par 72, 7,166 yards. We're playing on POA greens this week. So the golf course being a par 72, we're going to see our full complement of 4 par 5s. We'll also see 4 par 3s and 10 par 4s. A pretty classic setup as far as PGA Tour golf courses go, and really as far as most of your casual amateur golfers, we're usually used to that par 72, par 36 on both sides, 2 par 5s, 2 par 3s. It's a pretty standard setup for a golf course. At 7,166 yards, it's not very long, but that doesn't necessarily mean that driving distance isn't helpful. Our champion last year was Cameron Champ, who we all know can push it out there, the longest driver of the golf ball on tour, including Bryson DeChambeau. So driving distance will certainly help us here, but it's not like the golf course is so long that you have to be a bomber of the ball to succeed. And as a matter of fact, I've actually come to find out, and this is why I really wanted to drop the video, I was really surprised when looking at corollary statistics for finishers in the top 20 in this event over the last few years at just how important your short game is around Silverado. You can really outpace your finishing position from a ball striking standpoint by running hot on the greens and as well as around the greens this week. A lot of players were able to post high finishes with very mediocre ball striking numbers. And that's pretty rare to see, at least rare to see for so many players to be able to accomplish, right? Sometimes you'll have a player in a tournament that's not hitting the ball well, but the putter's just so hot that it carries them. And you'll see that. Maybe one or two players have that type of event across the PGA Tour schedule. But at this track in particular, it looks like, a lot of players are able to gain positions on the leaderboard through their short game, through their around the green game, through the putter, through the chipping. So it's something we're really going to be looking at pretty heavily this week, more heavily than we ever have in the past. The weather in Napa, I don't know if you guys have seen the weather in the Bay Area right now, but it looks like post-apocalyptic. It looks like an atomic bomb was dropped in the Bay Area like a few days ago. Like the crazy yellow orange hue to that area right now. I don't know what's going on, but as far as the weather report goes, it looks like it's going to be great weather. We're looking at weather in the high 80s and sunny there in Napa. Wind speeds at 8 to 10 miles an hour, which really is a piece of cake for these guys on the PGA Tour. So the golfer prototype we're looking for this week, we're looking for strokes gained in the short game, strokes gained tee to green, as well as ball striking. We'll include both of those. We want to include the tee to green statistic because we just want to weight this short game, the importance of the short game, just that little extra bit this week. We're also going to be looking at strokes gained putting as well as strokes gained around the green. And that is the setup for the Safeway Open and Silverado Country Club. And before we get into the top shelf plays, I'm going to go ahead and spark up. So today I am smoking Sour Razz by the grower Kushagram. It is a 50-50 hybrid, so 50% indica, 50% sativa. It's testing at 28.61% THC, and it smells absolutely incredible. It smells like sort of smells like Mr. Clean or some sort of like citrus cleaner. It smacks you in the face with the citrus overtones immediately. So really excited to get into this one and then to get into the Safeway Open. It's going to be a crazy event, guys. We're going to be looking at some golfers that we haven't looked at here on the show before. It's a much weaker field than we've seen really at the Safeway Open even in the past. But compared to these fields we've seen in the last couple weeks, this field is so weak. So really excited to dig in and see if we can get you guys a win this week. 200K to first would still be nice. So let's focus on getting that win this week, guys. Okay. Tastes as good as it smells. So the first top shelf play, and top shelf plays are $10,000 or more in DraftKings salary. The first top shelf play of the week, and I cannot believe that he is the highest priced player in this field, but after glancing through the field, I guess it's not entirely surprising. It's Siwoo Kim at $10,800, 14.6% projected ownership, and Siwoo is a player that I've been touting recently. The ball striking from Siwoo lately has just been off the charts. And even in the really stacked fields that we've been seeing, he was able to qualify through the BMW, I believe. And even through that event, Siwoo Kim is just showing stellar ball striking numbers. We know that Siwoo is a very streaky putter, and by streaky, he's a bad putter. But he can find rounds where he can at least be neutral or gain through the putter. But for ball striking, and he made it through the Northern Trust. He did not qualify for the BMW. But at the Northern Trust, what a ball striking clinic he put on. He was able to gain 4.6 strokes ball striking, and that included 8 strokes gained tee to green for Siwoo in that event. And that was with the big boys, right? The Northern Trust, 120 players qualified for that event. So that was the top 120 FedEx Cup points players. So we had a strong field there. And for Siwoo to show that type of ball striking ceiling in a field this week, even at his price tag, he seems more than worth it. Over the last 24 rounds, if you factor in the strength of field he's been playing in my opinion, there is no ball striker that's been better than Siwoo. According to the model, he's coming in third in ball striking and second tee to green over the last 24 measured rounds. Keep in mind that some of these guys over their last 24 measured rounds, if they didn't qualify for some of these FedEx Cup playoff events, they're going to be compared against much weaker fields and much weaker competition. So even though Siwoo's statting out as third in ball striking and second tee to green, I think he is the best tee to green player in this field. At least he has been over the last 24 rounds, in my opinion. So I'll gladly look to him. The ownership is a little higher than I like to look to Siwoo at, to be honest with you, at just under 15%. I like to get him in that sort of 10% range. But I think this price tag is actually going to scare more people off than this projected ownership from Fantasy National is showing us. I really don't expect Siwoo to really sniff that 15% range, and I expect him to come in closer to the 10% range. So riding that intuition, I do like the idea of starting rosters with Siwoo Kim, given that no one can hold a candle to him from a ball striking standpoint over the last 24 measured rounds. He has been that good. But we are going to have to hope that Siwoo has a good week with the putter. As I mentioned, strokes gained around the green and on the greens this week. It's going to be important, much more important than any event we've looked at thus far on the podcast. So you do have to tread carefully there with Siwoo. He's a good around the green player, but his putter can be absolutely atrocious. So tread lightly. Don't be too don't be too surprised if Siwoo loses ground through his putter, but if he is able to be neutral with that flat stick, I absolutely love his chances this week. He's a guy that can absolutely win, especially in this field. He can win in strong fields, so why not in this Safeway Open field? So Siwoo Kim, our first top shelf play at $10,800 and 14.6% projected ownership. Our next top shelf play actually won his first start on the Champions Tour. Loves playing in California. It's Phil Mickelson at $10,600, 9.8% projected ownership. And when I say short game will be valuable on a golf course, I'm sure it shouldn't take too much convincing of you guys to look to Phil. Lefty, of course, one of the greatest short game players that this game has ever seen. He can run hot and cold with the putter, especially from the short to mid distances. That 6 to 8 foot range can really at times get to Phil. But man, this guy loves playing in California. He's recently been a very solid performer in the swing season, early season range. And he should be coming off some confidence off that Champions Tour win. I know he's playing with the older guys, but a win is a win, and it should instill some confidence in Phil. I love the fact that we're in California for Phil. I love the fact that we're looking at players that play well with the short game, and we're getting them at sub 10% ownership. That's likely a reflection of that $10,600 price tag, which I do think is a little high, but Phil has plenty of win equity, and I would love to see Siwoo come in at similar ownership to Phil, because I like the idea of rostering both of them if they can come in around this 10% ownership range. And when I say rostering both of them, not necessarily in the same lineup. I wouldn't likely play them in the same lineup, but if I am playing, 3, 4, 5 lineups, I like the idea of absolutely starting at least one of those lineups with each one of these guys in Siwoo Kim and Phil Mickelson. And my last top shelf play of the week is Brendan Steele, priced at $10,000 flat, 22.6% projected ownership. And Steele, the course history for him is incredible. Won this event back-to-back in 2016 and 2017. Just does not play poorly around Silverado, it appears. So he is chalky at north of 22%, but he is, of all the chalky players, and once I get to the mid-tier, the mid-range, I'll get to some players who are very chalky, who I think are too owned. But of all the chalky players, I do like looking to Steele. Hasn't missed the cut here in the last 5 years. And again, he had those back-to-back wins in 2017 and 2018. So yeah, Brendan Steele, even at this elevated price tag, even at the elevated ownership, the coupling of how well he rates out in the model with, his success in the past on this golf course, I think of all the chalky plays this week, he's the chalk that we should eat. So, yeah, Brendan Steele, $10,000 flat and 22.6% projected ownership is the last top shelf play of the week. And I should mention, I certainly, if you haven't guessed this by now, I like the idea of going to Siwoo and Phil more than I like the idea of going to Steele. Just that ownership difference is too wide, in my opinion. But with that being said, if you're playing enough lineups that you can fit Steele into a build or two, I absolutely like the idea of doing so. And yeah, so those are our only top shelf plays. We can get into the mid shelf plays next. Those are players priced at $7,500 or more and below $10,000. So in that $7,500 to $10,000 range. And, typically I like to live in this range, but at this event, we can really actually look down into the SCHWAG bag a little bit more, I think, given that the field is so weak. Some of these players that are priced in the $6,000 range actually have some pretty decent viability this week. So we might not live in the mid shelf as much as we normally do, but there are still certainly some guys that we can look to here, and particularly some guys we can look to fade here, as it looks like some ownerships congregating in that low $9,000 range. So I'm going to respark and we'll get into the mid shelf plays. Okay. The first mid-shelf play, and he's going to have a great week with the putter. It's Sergio Garcia at $9,900, 14% projected ownership. And I mentioned pedigree, at the top of this podcast when I was recapping Dustin Johnson and the Tour Championship. And when looking at pedigree, Sergio Garcia is certainly one of the most pedigreed players in this field. So to get him at $9,900 feels fair, given that he hasn't been in great form recently, but he hasn't been awful. The 14% projected ownership feels fair as well. So neither the price tag nor the projected ownership get me super excited. But when looking at how Garcia statted out, I was really intrigued. So Sergio I would have been much higher on Sergio if he weren't one of literally the worst putters in this field, which was pretty surprising to see. 146th in strokes gained putting over his last 24 measured rounds. Now I can get behind guys running volatility with the putter and, running hot and cold with the putter, but this looks like something might be like seriously broken for Sergio. As far as putting goes, he's first in this field tee to green and fourth around the green over the last 24 measured rounds. So, man, if he can just make anything, then I absolutely love him. But to come in 146th, literally almost dead last in this field in strokes gained putting, and it doesn't look like he's really been turning it around lately, I just don't know if I have much confidence in Sergio to be able to find a neutral week with the putter. But if he does, he is a guy that you're going to have to own at this price tag. And the ownership's too low if he's able to just, maybe just not even lose boatloads of strokes putting. Maybe if you can just lose, half a stroke over the week, then he's still someone that you might want to own. So Sergio's someone that really has me intrigued this week. I'm not really sure what direction I'm gonna land on him. Right now, I believe I'm gonna go ahead and roster him probably over this 14% clip. But man, I would love to see some encouraging signs from him with the putter. It's definitely a guy who in showdown, if you guys see Sergio show some signs with the putter early, in that first round, if he's able to be about neutral with the putter, look to live bet Sergio, look to play Sergio in showdown. If it's a week that he's got the putter going a little bit, I really like Sergio. So if you don't want to roster him off the bat, maybe play the wait and see approach, wait and see how he performs round one, and then maybe hop on a live bet or roster him in showdown after that. The next mid-shelf play, and it's another pedigree sort of play, even though I his pedigree sort of can come into question because it's been such a struggle for him lately. I just don't quite understand. It's Jordan Spieth at $9,800. He's projected for 8.2% ownership. And Spieth, like Garcia, has been terrible with the putter lately. But the thing is, We don't expect that of Jordan Spieth. While I think Sergio might be broken, I think Spieth has a much better chance, or is more inclined to be able to make a quick bounce back with the putter. And when I say Spieth's been bad with the putter recently, let's put some numbers to that. So Spieth's coming in 17th in our custom model. He's 108th in this field in strokes gained putting over the last 24 measured rounds. And for Jordan Spieth, that's awful, of course. You'd expect him to be one of the better putters in this field, and he's, in that bottom third. So if Spieth can turn that around, it looks like the rest of his game's actually in good enough shape, especially in this weak field, to pay off at this $9,800 price tag. And I'm a little surprised at the ownership, because usually Jordan Spieth is not to the same degree as Tiger Woods, but he's a popular player amongst the public, the general public. So usually he carries ownership no matter what. But to not get him at double-digit ownership, for him not to push into double-digit ownership in a field this week, yeah, I'm okay taking some shots on Spieth. Is he my favorite play here in the $9,000 range? No, and I would probably, this $9,000 range is one that I'm okay really avoiding for the most part and dipping down into that $8,000 range. But if you are a Jordan Spieth person and you're someone that likes to roster Jordan Spieth, this is one of your weeks you can absolutely do it. In a weak field where his ownership's a little bit suppressed, the price tag's fair enough, especially with how weak the field is, and his game sets up pretty well for Silverado. So, yeah, let's go ahead and look to Jordan Spieth if you want to this week, if you're a Spieth guy, at that $9,800 price tag and 8.2% projected ownership. And a guy I like a little bit more than Spieth, but he's coming in at double the projected ownership, is Chez Reavie at $9,600. Let me respark before I get into Chez. So Chez is just not a player that's super exciting. I actually saw Chez's swing coach was on the what is Golf Channel's podcast called? Whatever their podcast is called, but he was on golf.com's or Golf Channel's podcast, and he was mentioning that Chez Reavie, when they sort of game plan for events that Chez is going to play in, he's compared him to Floyd Mayweather, which was hilarious to me. But his point was, and I get his point was, he's not really coming in with knockout power. He's going to be a technician. He's going to be a tactician. And over the long haul, shot by shot, he's going to incrementally outperform you. And once you aggregate that over 4 rounds, Chez expects to be in the mix. So that's the type of player you're taking when you roster Chez Reavie. So don't expect to see anything flashy, anything super exciting. You just hope that he is able to find enough fairways to be the tactician that, as his swing coach mentioned, that he wants to be able to incrementally, shot after shot, just gain over the field. And if he can aggregate that over 4 rounds, over 72 holes, then he should be in good position. So he's a guy that's just really going to have to build slowly and incrementally. I think he can do that around this golf course. He has the short game to perform well around this golf course. He is one of the more talented golfers in this field, in my opinion. And he's also at 15.5% projected ownership, coming in with one of the lower ownership projections in this range. We'll get to the chalky guys after him that are coming up here soon in the low 9s and high $8,000 range. But I seriously prefer Chez if we're going to get, the ownership discount that we are on him, just to pay a few $100s more. Yeah, I'll look to Chez Reavie at $9,600 and 15.5% projected ownership. So these next 3 players I've mentioned, there's some chalk that I'm looking to fade this week. So I'm going to mention all of them because the model does like them, and I do think they have, relatively good chance of success this week. But the ownership is just ridiculous for these guys. So first player, Doc Redman, $9,200 price tag, 20.5% projected ownership. And I like to let you guys make your own decisions. So let me run through the model numbers with Redman really quickly. Redman coming in 24th in the custom model, 4th in ball striking, which of course you love to see. 34th in putting and 63rd with the short game. Around the green, he's coming in 127th. And around the green was something that really I saw correlated to players that were able to finish in the top 20 at this event. So if Redman's going to be carrying, this chalky ownership with such a big red flag around the green, I'm willing to go ahead and fade. Granted, he does check every other box. He really does. So I do like Redman as a play. I just don't like his ownership. And since he does have a large enough red flag with the poor around the green play here lately, I'm inclined to go ahead and fade Redman and rather pay $400 more to look up to like a Chez Reavie at that 15.5% projected ownership, or even $600 more to get all the way up to Jordan Spieth at 8.2% projected ownership. So Doc Redman, $9,200. An absolutely fine play in his own right in a vacuum. I just think the ownership's too high. I also think the ownership's too high with Harold Varner III, HV3 at $9,100, 25% projected ownership. And, it's just 25% projected ownership. I love HV3, and the model loves HV3, but a quarter of lineups owning him, if I can eliminate a quarter of lineups with, a bad week of golf from Harold Varner III, I like my chances. A 25% chance that he's needed in the lineup that's going to go ahead and win the $200,000 seems ridiculous to me. And, we are talking GPP plays here. So if you're playing cash and you need a sort of safe play that you just, hope can make the cut at a very fair price tag, then I do like HV3. And since his ownership will be so high, he would be a great cash game option. But 25% in this field, no, thank you. But again, as I like to let you guys make your own decisions, Varner is coming in 16th in the custom model. He's 9th in this field in ball striking, 16th around the green, 113th in putting. So he's like these other guys who I mentioned earlier who have just been absolutely awful with the putter, Jordan Spieth, Sergio Garcia, except, we're getting these guys at significantly reduced ownership. Yes, they're coming in at, a few $100 more than Varner. Sergio, $800 more. Spieth, $700 more. Reavie's, $500 more. But they're not coming in at 25% projected ownership. So let's go ahead and fade HV3 this week. A bad week from HV3, and we have a serious leg up on the field. And if he and Redman can have bad weeks together, then, man, you're really cooking. And if all three of these players can have bad weeks, the third player being Cam Davis coming in at an $8,900 price tag, 23.7% projected ownership. And we're going to go ahead and fade him too. And Cam Davis is a guy that we've been touting a lot recently. His ball striking has been great. It's been off the charts. And this price tag likely too low. I was surprised to see Davis priced so low in this week of a field, especially what he's done ball striking over the last 24 measured rounds. But 23.7% projected ownership is too high, especially for a guy who, isn't quite the caliber player as some of these guys he's priced around. Not yet, at least. He hasn't proven that yet. And he's had poor last couple of rounds. The last couple of rounds we saw Cam Davis, he was not striking the ball well. He was losing strokes tee to green. And that's what we need to see out of Cam Davis. He does possess a strong short game, which is a great combo around this golf course, the length he provides as well as possessing a strong short game. But man, that ownership is so high for a guy that just hasn't proven to be consistent enough to warrant it. He does come in first in our custom model. He's 14th ball striking, 8th in the short game, 12th putting, 45th around the green. He really does check every box, but with him showing a little bit of lackluster form over the last two rounds, and coming in at this extremely high ownership, I mean, I like to play guys like Cam Davis when they're statting out this well and they're not the absolute chalk of the slate. Being able to fade Cam Davis as massive chalk feels like an opportunity that we should seize. So even though he's coming in first in my custom model, I will be fading. And even though he's a guy who I've touted to you guys over the last, few events he's played in and has come through for us, I'm going to fade Cam Davis, and I think you should too because of that 23.7% projected ownership. The next player that I like, but we might also be fading because of the ownership projection, is Sam Burns at $8,700, 19.4% projected ownership. And man, he just snuck in under that 20% number, but man, with all of the options around him and above him and below him, even like significantly above him and significantly below him, I would look to just go to a different type of roster construction and kind of avoid this pricing range. I think there are plenty of other viable roster constructions, stars and scrubs being one of them, where we could just avoid the $9,000 range, the mid $9,000 to the mid $8,000 range. And that's where all the ownership's lying. And I imagine it's got to be pigeonholing people into a specific roster construction. So I really like the idea of just avoiding this range this week. Even though a lot of these guys do stat out well, they're mediocre players at the end of the day. Yes, they're better than most of the players in this field, given that the field is weak, but they're not the world beaters, right? They're not the JTs, they're not the DJs, they're not the Roms, they're not the Rorys, they're not the world-class talents. So this ownership that's congregating in this range just seems too much to me. It feels wrong. So I'll be fading this entire range and looking to differentiate that way and changing up my roster builds, likely going more stars and scrubs. So, but again, to let you guys make the decisions on your own, Burns is coming in 4th in our custom model, 15th in ball striking, 24th in the short game, 44th around the green. I mean, yeah, he's another guy who's going to check every box, but Sam Burns is not an elite player. He's not a world-class talent as of yet on the PGA Tour. So if I have an opportunity to fade him and eliminate a fifth of the field, I'm going to go ahead and do that. And, if we can get even half of these guys, these 4 guys that I just mentioned, to miss a cut this week, we are cooking. Between Redmond, Varner, Davis, and Burns, we would be set up for such success just by pivoting to other guys around them or by changing our roster construction altogether. So just something I want you guys to really consider this week. I think it could give us a huge leg up and hopefully help one of us take down that $200,000. The next mid-shelf play I like is Bud Cauley at $8,600, 7.5% projected ownership. And, you remember I touted Bud, I think back at the PGA Championship. He got off to a bit of a hot start, so that was good to see. And the reason we liked Bud there is the same reason we like him here. He's just a great short game player, a guy we can trust around the green. So if he can get a little hot with that tee to green game, which he's shown the propensity to do from time to time, then I really like Bud Cauley's chances this week at a nice finish. I was a little surprised to see the price tag come in this high, but it's tempered the ownership projection, which is down at 7.5%, which I'm a fan of paying up for discounted ownership. So $8,600 is a bit high for Cauley, but at that 7.5% projected ownership, I'm certainly on board. Cauley is coming in 8th in the custom model. He is 2nd around the green in this field. So that speaks to just how good this guy is and how much he can be trusted around the green. He is 64th in ball striking, so he's a very average ball striker, especially for this field. But as I mentioned, he can run a little hot with the ball striking. So Bud Cauley coming in 8th in the custom model, only at 7.5% projected ownership. Yes, he's a bit overpriced, but let's go ahead and pay the extra price to get that ownership discount this week. The next player I like is a guy who was really going through a ball striking heater, has cooled off a bit since. It's Henrik Norlander at $8,500, 13.6% projected ownership. I don't love, so that's got me a little lukewarm on Norlander, but he's ranking 10th in the custom model, 5th ball striking, but 102nd around the green. So that's my concern. The ownership feels a bit high for a guy with that big of a glaring red flag around the green, but the price tag is about fair for a guy that's this good of a ball striker. And with the single red flag, the ownership seems about right. So I think both the price and the ownership are spot on for Norlander. I'll try to be even to the field, at least try to stuff him in, a couple lineups. Because he has shown a lot of upside since the PGA Tour restart. And when he's hitting the ball well, he pays off in DraftKings. So Henrik Norlander at $8,500 and 13.6% projected ownership is my next mid-shelf play. Down at the bottom of the $8,000 range, I also like Mark Hubbard at $8,100, 16.7% projected ownership. Again, the ownership projection here is a bit high. I'm a little more inclined to stomach it for Hubbard, though. a guy who I think is really coming into his own on the PGA Tour, and I expect to take a bit of a leap here in his second full year on tour. Hubbard's a guy that can just be counted on to be a good ball striker and a really solid, just all-around player, really. Very well-rounded. Coming in 21st in the custom model, 38th in ball striking, and 20th in putting, 34th with the short game. I mean, he's got a solid short game. He's got a solid ball striking. He's played in some pretty strong fields here recently, all the way up until the BMW. So you know his statistics are being counted against, stronger fields. So I do like Hubbard this week. I was wishing we'd get him at a bit of a lower ownership, but man, he's sort of the prototype type of guy that I like around here, a guy who we can count to scramble, we can count on to be good around the green, but that also possesses, very good ball striking, especially in this field. So Hubbard, even though the ownership's a little bit high at 16.7%, I will be rostering him plenty this week at that $8,100 price tag. And let me get some water here and re-spark. We have two more players in the mid-shelf. Okay. Let's get this lit again. And the next player I like is Cameron Tringale at $7,500, 16.2% projected ownership. Again, I'm not in love with, but Tringale stats out, really, really well. Coming in second in the custom model, 26th in ball striking, 13th in the short game, 23rd around the green, 29th in putting. He does it all well. He's checking every box, and he's not coming in with one of these like 20 to 25% ownership projections. So while I don't love the 16.2% ownership projection, at least it's not, that 24% projection Cam Davis had, or 25% of Varner, 21% that Doc Redman had. Like, we can stomach 16% for a guy that's checking every box, especially since we'll be fading so many of the other chalky options. We've already differentiated ourselves enough, so we can look to guys like Hubbard and Tringale, even at their around 16 to 17% projected ownership. The last mid-shelf play for the week is Charlie Hoffman. Good old Chuck Hoffman coming in at $7,500, 6.3% projected ownership, and that projected ownership number is surprisingly low. Hoffman's a talented golfer. Pedigree. When you're thinking pedigree, he certainly could be considered to be above these guys that he's priced around. A very talented player in his own right. And Chuck can run very hot and cold. The model this week seems to like him. So he's coming in fifth. He's 33rd in ball striking, 26th in putting. So he's been running pretty hot with that putter recently. 19th with the short game. So, he, for this price tag especially, he's almost checking as many boxes, as a guy like Cameron Tringale is. So to get him all the way at 6.3% projected ownership, I love Hoffman this week. You don't have to own much of him to, be overweight to the field. So go ahead and sprinkle in Chuck Hoffman into one of your lineups this week. I think he carries a tremendous amount of upside, and, the ownership's not following that. So Chuck Hoffman, $7,500, 6.3% projected ownership is our last mid-shelf play, and then we can get into everyone's favorite part of the show, the SCHWAG bag, our golfers that are priced under $7,500. This joint keeps going out, so let me rip through a little bit of it. This stuff is really good, by the way. Make sure you guys comment. Let me know what you guys are smoking too, because I'm always looking for suggestions, trying to figure out what I should try, what's good, what sort of effects you guys are feeling from what you're smoking out there. So let me know. Drop it in the comments. Mm-hmm. All right. Our first SCHWAG bag play is Mr. Taylor with no Y, Gooch at $7,300, 14.7% projected ownership. And as you can probably guess, I don't love the ownership. especially when we're talking about, these guys that don't necessarily instill a ton of confidence week in and week out. But, Gooch for this field and at this price tag, he sort of stands out. So Gooch coming in at the $7,300 price tag, ninth in the custom model. He is 27th in ball striking and 18th in the short game, ninth with the putter. He is 91st around the green, which is, these players that have these single red flags, once they start to get up into that, 15, 16% projected ownership, it's where you start to be cautionary. So if you like one of the pivots around Gooch, I'd absolutely encourage you to go to them. But if what I just told you about Taylor Gooch makes you want to roster some Taylor Gooch, then go for it. He's an absolutely fine play this week. You hope you get ownership, sub 15% and closer to that 10% range. But even if it does come in at 15%, I think Gooch is statting out well enough that he warrants a look regardless. The next swag bag play is Bryce Garnett at $7,100, 6.1% projected ownership. And Garnett I'm a little lukewarm on Garnett, and I'm a bit lukewarm on a lot of these guys in the swag bag. So I think you're going to have to just kind of take your personal preference here. It's a bunch of dudes that, they have some skill sets that can lead to success around this golf course, but they just don't show the consistency from week to week to really have a lot of confidence in them. But Bryce Garnett, at the very least, is someone that can churn out a high upside finish. He's 18th in the custom model, 25th ball striking, 40th with the putter, 43rd with the short game. He is 84th around the green, which that's sort of red flag territory, but we're down at $7,100, almost in the $6,000 range. The ownership projection isn't that crazy at just over 6%. So, well, I'm not pumped to play Bryce Garnett, or not super excited to roster Bryce Garnett. If you are, then good for you. I would go for it. But I would actually rather look to one of these guys at $7,000 flat. The guys at $7,000 flat, one of them is Pat Perez, 2.1% projected ownership. And Pat Perez, just too good of a player to have this price tag and projected ownership. Hasn't been playing awful lately either. 29th in the custom model, 48th ball striking, 31st putting, 41st with the short game, 82nd around the green, which again is a slight red flag, but also again, we're down here near the $6,000 range, and we're talking about minuscule ownership at about 2%. So Pat Perez, too good of a player for that projected ownership. I love rostering Pat Perez in at least one of your lineups. He's a guy that can get you a top 10 in this field, maybe even a top 5. And at this price tag and projected ownership, that would go a long way. So while he doesn't do anything particularly well, or hasn't at least over the last 24 measured rounds, he also doesn't do anything particularly poorly. He's pretty well-rounded, and he really has been playing up to his potential. So if Pat Perez can start to play up to a little more of, baseline Pat Perez, really like the prospects this week for him at 2.1% projected ownership. Okay, the next swag bag play I like is Jason Duffner, and he's not priced at a flat 7K. It's actually $6,900 price tag, 7.7% projected ownership, but I still like going to Perez or Duffner over Garnett. Duffner, a guy who can run really hot with the irons, of course. We know this. Jason Duffner can be the best iron player in this field if he comes in form, but just an absolutely terrible putter. So that's what you're getting when you roster Duffner. You're going to have to hope that he's, somewhat decent with the putter this week. Similar to, Sergio, who I mentioned earlier, just been god-awful with the putter. But if we can get a neutral week from these guys with the putter, and maybe you correlate them, correlate a bad putter lineup and throw Sergio and Duffner in a lineup and see where you can build from there. I don't hate that idea. I don't necessarily hate that idea. They do have decent short games at the very least, just not good on the greens. So if we can get Jason Duffner to perform decently on the greens, 7.7% projected ownership is fair. The $6,900 price tag, absolutely fair for a player as good as Duffner. So I do like Jason Duffner this week. I also like Scott Stallings a tiny bit. $6,900, 5.1% projected ownership. And Stallings is not super exciting. I'm not like really pumped to go out there and roster me some Scott Stallings, but he's just been hitting the ball decently enough that I think you have to at least consider him. Um, let's see where Stallings is coming in the custom model. There he is, 23rd. He's 36th in ball striking, 47th in putting, 47th with the short game, 75th around the green. So again, these guys down here seem to be really, really falling off with the around the green numbers, but we're in the pricing range where we have to be willing to accept some shortcomings somewhere. So $6,900, statting out decently. That's really the only reason I'm looking to Stallings. He's not someone who I personally get, like a fuzzy feeling about or expect to perform well this week, but the model's telling me otherwise, so I would be remiss if I did not mention Scott Stallings to you guys at that $6,900 price tag and 5.1% projected ownership. I would rather personally look to Brandon Hagee at $6,800, 2.1% projected ownership. And Hagee's got some length off the tee, which certainly won't hurt him around this golf course, as I mentioned. But on top of that, he's got a stellar short game, ranking 4th in putting and 1st in the short game in this field over the last 24 measured rounds, 98th in ball striking. So Hagee, a bit of a streaky ball striker, really has not been striking it well lately, of course, as the stats are proving, but will be gaining distance will be gaining driving distance against the field this week. So man, if he can be carried by his short game, as I mentioned, we've seen players carried to top 20 finishes solely via their short game. So if we can get a short game performance like Hagee's been having recently, and maybe the ball striking can just, progress a bit, then he really does have top 20, top 15 upside. So I do like Brandon Hagee because he's coming in with such low projected ownership at that 2.1%, $6,800 price tag. Fair enough, shouldn't be very difficult to get to for you guys, and he's a prime target for a stars and scrubs type of build. As is Nick Watney, also at $6,800, 1.9% projected ownership. And Watney is a guy who, I've touted him a few times here over the last few events he's played, and he has not come through at all. I'm not sure what's going on with the guy's game. It might be completely broken. It really might be. But if it does start to show signs of life, we want to be there for sure. And if it starts to show signs of life, it looks like this golf course will be one that Watney will be able to take advantage of. He's coming in 19th in the custom model, and that's because he just does everything meh, right? 61st in ball striking, 58th in putting, 39th in short game, 32nd around the green. So we're going to trust that Nick Watney can outperform even how he's been performing around the green, and hopefully that can carry him to a finish that made cut at the very least. Or we're hoping that the ball striking numbers progress. Neither, honestly, is all that likely, but they're possible. And the ownership is almost reflecting that at 1.9%. So if you're someone that believes in I said pedigree, Nick Watney, a good player for these players he's priced around. If you're someone that ends up down in this pricing range and Brandon Hagee's too much for you to stomach, and you maybe want to go with a guy who's shown more over the course of his career, then I'd look to Nick Watney at $6,800 and 1.9% projected ownership. I also like Seamus Power at $6,700, 6.1% projected ownership. And Power is a guy that I normally don't roster, and that's just because he's like a pretty awful ball striker. See, 94th in this field in ball striking, but 9th in strokes gained in the short game and 7th around the green. Since I normally don't really ever look at Power, I didn't realize he was such a good short game player and around the green player. But going back through his previous rounds, even past the last 24 measured rounds, this guy has a good short game on him. So again, one of these players who we hope can backdoor his way into a top 20 just via the short game, being able to really outgain the field in the short game, which is something that I don't think a lot of people are going to be looking at this week. And I was really surprised to see again that short game is something that people have been able to ride to success around Silverado, but If it's the case again this year, then it looks like we're getting a bargain on Seamus Power. And maybe some folks are looking at that with that 6.1% projected ownership. That's a little higher than I would expect it to be, like 3 times the ownership projection of Hagee and Watney. But yeah, the short game is no joke for Seamus Power. So I would look to him if you're sort of building a correlation of short game players at that $6,700 price tag and 6.1% projected ownership. We're going to close the show with 2 absolute bombs, both sub 1% ownership. So, I mean, again, if you're one of these people that likes to take these players, I like to throw them at you every now and again. I don't love either of these guys, and maybe the last guy at the flat min, I might roster him once, but these are just guys that at under sub 1% ownership, they have a path to being players that you need to win the $200,000. Is it all that likely? No, but they at least have a path, or I can build a case for them having a path to being in that lineup. So we're going to spark up for the last time, and then we'll get to the absolute bombs down here at sub 1% ownership. The first bomb is Hudson Swafford, 0.7% projected ownership, $6,500 price tag. And Swafford has been absolutely terrible lately, so, I mean, quite honestly, you probably shouldn't roster him. But he's statting out 12th in the custom model, and that's because he's 17th in the short game and 19th around the green. Likely it's because he's been having to get up and down a lot because he's been missing so many greens, but yeah, I mean, if we're gonna ride these short game players and we're gonna ride the short game narrative, then I can't exclude Hudson Swafford. Again, no confidence really whatsoever that Swafford will perform well, but he does have a case to a path to success this week through a short game. So being sub 1% owned and, really cheap at that $6,500 price tag, you can do worse than Hudson Swafford. I'll say that much. You could do worse. But if you really want to take a bomb in that range, Hudson Swafford's your guy. And if you need someone at the flat min, we have one player left in the SCHWAG bag. It is James Hahn at flat $6,000, 0.6% projected ownership, even less projected ownership than our guy Hudson Swafford. And Hahn is another player who has just been really bad lately. Really hasn't been able to qualify for these top tier events as a result. We saw James Hahn, pop on the PGA Tour a couple years back as a pretty decent player. So as far as that pedigree conversation goes, he's shown it before. He's coming in the custom model 7th. He's 41st in ball striking, 28th in the short game, 17th around the green. So pretty well-rounded in this field for the price tag. Again, he's statting out against much weaker fields, but man, at the flat min and at 0.6% projected ownership, James Hahn carries enough of a ceiling for me to be on board. So I think you guys should actually roster a James Hahn lineup. I feel better about Hahn than I do about Swafford. I'll put it that way. So I'm okay, really touting you guys going to at least one James Hahn lineup. If you're just playing, 3 lineups, I wouldn't do it. But at the point you're playing 5, try and sneak Hahn into a lineup, because if he can get us a top 10, which he's capable of doing, being at the flat min just allows you ultimate flexibility in your roster construction. And then 0.6% owned, we'll already be well ahead of the field. So coupling, a James Hahn lineup with fades of those players I mentioned in that, low $9,000 to high $8,000 range, Doc Redman, Harold Varner, Cam Davis, Sam Burns. Going that route is already going to make us so different that from there, just go with your gut. Go with who you like. And it should be a successful week for us. So, guys, I appreciate you, sticking in for the show. Always appreciate for you guys that made it to the end. Would love it if you guys can comment, rate, and review. Download the podcast on iTunes, on Spotify, on Apple Music, as well as we are now on Google podcasts, which is exciting to announce. So you can get us there if that's where you're going to be getting your podcasts. If you have any questions about this week, it's a really interesting week at the Safeway, and I've got some more insights that that I could potentially share with you. If you have some more questions, obviously, if you know me personally, hit me up. If not, drop them in the comments. Also, let me know what you're smoking in the comments. Feel free to DM me as well. Unfortunately, guys, there will be no favorite 8 article this week. As I mentioned, trying to get settled into the new digs, so we'll be focused on the move at the moment. But yeah, let's go ahead and bag ourselves one of these tournaments, guys. Hopefully you guys have been performing well over the last few weeks. I know it's been strange events with, the 70-man event, then the 30-man event with the FedEx Cup playoffs, but we're back to full field golf. Really excited at it. Really excited at the opportunity. Let's go get a big tournament win this week, guys. Love you all, and thank you for continuing to watch. Peace.